Okay, hello everybody. It's Sunday, November 22nd, the 57th anniversary of John F. Kennedy's assassination. 3 more days on Wednesday, the 25th, will be the 60th birthday of JFK Jr. We're going to cut to the chase. What we're discussing today is a recent tweet by Ezra Cohn Watnick. Let's take a look at the screen share. I am going to click some buttons here. That is not the screen share. It is the wrong window. Try one more time. Sorry about that. We're a little. I think this is what we want. Sorry about that. Okay. Um, Going over to Twitter. I wonder if I could move this around, move it out of the way. It's definitely a little bit difficult. Here on Twitter, you'll see the tweet from Ezra Cohn, assistant. And I got this from a Q-tard named series of numbers of letters. Said no biggie. Ezra Cohn retweeting the Nuremberg Tribunal tweet. Assistant Attorney General Macon Delrahim issues statement commemorating the 75th anniversary of the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg. And you can click through to Ezra Cohn's Twitter and find that find that tweet directly. Ezra Cohn, that's this guy over here, who I'm now following. This was his last tweet. They have the press release from the AG's office, and here it is. And I'll read it to you. Assistant Attorney General Macon Delrahim of the Department of Justice Antitrust Division issued the following statement on his participation in the Robert H. Jackson Center's virtual reading of Justice Jackson's opening statement at Nuremberg for the 75th anniversary of the International Military Tribunal at Nuremberg. Uh, and they go on with the blah blah blah, and they give a link to a YouTube channel for this Robert H. Jackson uh, Memorial Center event. So we're going to go into a lot of this and do a little bit of a deep dive. First of all, let's look at Ezra. Besides his Twitter page, uh, we're going to take a look at Ezra Cohn Watnick. Here he is. Uh, he was born May 18th, 1986. He's a young guy. His age is um, 34. So he's a young whippersnapper. Notice on the Wikipedia page, I want to point out they say who his spouse is, a woman named Rebecca Miller, and they got married in 2016. It's a very common name. We're not going to look her up. She doesn't have a hot link. But they don't list who his parents are or where he was born. Okay, and this is something you'll commonly find with people in the intelligence community. You know someone's a spook when they don't list anything about their family. It's a common Wikipedia omission. Just keep an eye out for that when you look these people up. So, in early life and career, his life starts when he graduates college at the University of Pennsylvania. Uh, we could assume he's from Pennsylvania because he's also down here in his personal life. He's a member of the Union League of Philadelphia. I'll just briefly go into Ezra Cohen's membership of the Union League of Philadelphia, founded in 1862 as a patriotic society to support the policies of Abraham Lincoln, is today a private membership only club. Founded by the Philadelphia Society, it remains a bastion of the elite. Among its 3,300 members are leaders in business, academia, law, medicine, politics, religion, and the arts. Members gather to socialize, dine, network, attend events, exercise, and relax in the 1865 Second Empire style building. The club is ranked first on the 5-star Platinum Club list. Uh, you'll see the location down here. That seems to be very close to where Giuliani had his press conference down by the river, like around here at that crematorium body shop or wherever, down by the water, that creepy place. This is what the building looks like. They have 3 restaurants, a hotel, a heritage center. So it's a highfalutin kind of deal. But let's get back to Ezra. Just to um, give a brief overview of who this guy is. He is the current Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, which is a very recent appointment. As they say, there aren't too many photographs of this guy. Uh, what that means is that there aren't too many photographs online of him. I'm sure there's plenty of photographs of him, but you just can't. They've been scrubbed. Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, he previously served as acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for Special Operations and Low Intensity Conflict National Security Advisor to U.S. Attorney General, and as former Senior Director for Intelligence Programs at the United States National Security Council. So this guy's like way beyond his years in clout. Uh, Before joining the White House, Cohn Watnick worked for the Defense Intelligence Agency, where he served in Miami, Haiti, Virginia, and Afghanistan. Uh, Cohn Watnick was accepted into training program for the Defense Clandestine Services, which uh, I'm not even going to go there, but it's a 3-letter agency that many of us never heard of before, which is saying a lot. Cohn Watnick underwent training at Camp Peary, uh, which looks like it's in Virginia, commonly known as the Farm, where he trained by the Central Intelligence Agency. He was assigned to Afghanistan with a GS 13 rank. He is temporarily assigned to the Defense Intelligence Agency's headquarters in 2014, et cetera, et cetera. Right? And one more note here is that he was um, basically I don't see it right in front of me, but he was basically brought in under the wing of Michael Flynn, General Flynn, as we know it. Here he is. Cohn Watnick was brought into the United States National Security Council by Michael T. Flynn, the former director of the Defense Intelligence Agency and President Donald Trump's first national security advisor. So that's who this guy is. The reason we're paying close attention to Ezra is because in the Q community, he's been one of the few names that have come up as people who think he's Q. In particular, this guy, Jeffrey Prather, who was another DIA veteran, uh, clandestine law enforcement guy. We're going to play right now what he has to say. This video on the Jeffrey Prather, Prather, YouTube channel is called Q Up JSOC in Biden charged. So that is there's actually two versions of this video on his channel. The other one was called Crackening or something about Kraken or Crackening. So it's all about the election. I'm starting at the 20 minutes and 11 seconds where he brings up Ezra Cohn as being Q.
Q, I believe now is Ezra Cohen Wasnick. I keep saying his name wrong, but he was with the DIA and he was a Flynn protege. And now he is heading up Department of Defense and just put out a speech, very brief speech, and it's up on my Patreon. And lots of people have been sending it to me, but I was very aware of that. And it's saying that Special Operations Command and JSOC, Joint Special Operations Command, are now equal to the other branches of the military. That's very significant. In my day, reason I couldn't transfer to Special Forces branch because it just became a branch. I was a military intelligence branch, and that's very, very significant. And I'm going to get into why. But first, let me talk a little bit about some of the breaking news. And this is out of Michelle Malkin. You know, hat tip kudos to her. And that this is exposing a guy named Eric Coomer, uh, who works for Dominion. And
So you can go back there. That's basically one of the references in this hour-long video. I'm not going to go through the whole thing. It would take too much time to watch it again just to find the Ezra Cohen stuff. But uh, basically, the gist of it is that Mr. Prather here believes that Ezra Cohen is the leader of the Q team. There's a lot of previous skeptics who now are coming on board and agreeing that Q is an actual intelligence operation run by white hats in the U.S. government to destroy the deep state. And Prather's argument is that I've been right about a lot of stuff in the past. So, you could just go by my track record. So this guy was a pretty connected guy himself. I'm going to go back to the Twitter post by Ezra, which is this one. Uh, it's, if I go back in Twitter, you'll see it blown up. So Ezra is posting this thing about military tribunals at Nuremberg, which is about 75 years ago, but military tribunals is a big factor in the whole Q mythology or the Q theory, that the deep state is so entrenched you won't be able to get them out because all the judges are corrupt. You'd have to bring them before military law based on the foreign interference and the war against the United States, that kind of thing. So if Ezra Cohen is posting this, right, there might be a secret code in there. So I went to the press release, which we looked at. I think this was here at the Department of Justice. And I haven't even looked into this Assistant Attorney General person yet, but I saw they were talking about um, a former uh, Assistant AG for. It's interesting how he puts it in this press release. It's very interesting. They kind of downplay who this guy is, whose name is Robert H. Jackson. And if you read closely, uh, I would blow this up a little bit because it's kind of small. Uh, he was the chief U.S. prosecutor at Nuremberg and once held the position of Assistant Attorney General of the Antitrust Division, same as the guy issuing the press release. So that's the connection there. What he doesn't mention when you look the guy actually up, Robert H. Jackson, he wasn't just an assistant U.S. attorney. He was FDR's attorney general. And he was a Supreme Court justice, something you figured they'd mention in the press release. He was also Solicitor General, but he wasn't just a Supreme Court justice appointed by FDR. He was the last Supreme Court justice to be appointed who didn't have a law degree. He only attended 1 year at Albany Law School and basically got the rest of the way by studying, pulling himself up on his bootstraps, and passing the bar. Basically, kind of like a GED, I guess you'd is the best way to. There's a loophole in New York State uh, bar regulations where New York is one of the only places in America where you can become a licensed attorney without actually finishing law school. You could just do 1 year and then clerk and pass the bar. I think now you would actually also need the permission of the New York State Court of Appeals, which is the highest court in New York State. In addition, you would have to go before that court, get them to hear you, and then convince them that you should be admitted without a law degree. But it's technically possible in New York, just like back in World War II. This guy, Robert H. Jackson, became a Supreme Court justice. And you can go through his whole story. It's a pretty big story here, but then they discuss his um, his tenure on the Supreme Court right here in Wikipedia, including his feud with Hugo Black and some of the cases, including Dennis versus the United States, which was the clear and present danger test. And there's a series of cases like this uh, where Justice Jackson um, uh, wrote the decision for, and basically the clear and present danger case had to do with communists and whether or not the First Amendment protects communists. And there was basically Jackson's concurrence, uh, where they basically say the authors um, when used as part of a conspiracy to act illegally, free speech loses its First Amendment protections. All right, that's the basic gist of the Dennis versus the United States. That if you're warring against the United States and conspiring, you don't have a First Amendment right. They were handing out basically circulars and talking about the Communist Manifesto back then. But today, that would apply to military tribunals and the mainstream media. Uh, in this instant case today with the 2020 election, they're all saying that President Trump lost the election without it actually being certified. Uh, if that's false and they're conspiring to do that with Democrats who openly cheated in the election, that's a clear and present danger. You also got to keep in mind that President Trump did identify Joe Biden as a threat to national security because of the Hunter Biden laptop material evidence that's showing that they colluded with foreign governments and took bribes, including China and the Ukraine, among others. So that's very interesting in the Q framework. This might be the takeaway that if Ezra is the Q team leader. Uh, but anyways, what happened was Robert Jackson was in line to become the Chief Justice of the U.S. Supreme Court, and his competitor was Hugo Black, so they were rivals on the Supreme Court. FDR sent Robert H. Jackson over to post-war Germany to take part in the Nuremberg trials. So, in the aftermath of the European War, uh, uh, in Germany, with Americans kind of took over on martial law and administered Germany for a number of years. Uh, we took a Supreme Court justice of the United States and inserted him into that scenario as part of an international military tribunal. So he wasn't serving on the Supreme Court for a while, and at that time he was passed over when the vacancy occurred to be Chief Justice. And Hugo Black didn't get it either. There was a third justice who got it, and there was a little bit of a kerfuffle about that. But the interesting takeaway there is that you can remove a Supreme Court justice and send them for duties at a military tribunal. I think that's very interesting considering what we've all been talking about in the Q community, don't you? So there's all that. Now we're going to take a look at what Robert Jackson said during the tribunals because there are films of this. This is his
The
summation.
unconditional surrender of Germany created for the victors novel and difficult problems of law and administration. Being the first such surrender of an entire and modernly organized society, precedents and past experiences are of little help in guiding our policy toward the vanquished.
So he starts off, all right, and this is actually Nuremberg Day 70, Jackson on Criminality of the Nazis, Part 1. And the basic rundown of this thing, this is about 8 minutes long, and then part two is about 6 minutes long. Interesting that they broke this into two parts because there's no reason to. They could have kept both parts together uh, in less than 15 minutes. But they broke it into two parts for a reason because the first part is saying something, and then the second part is saying something else. And then there's the reality of what actually happened with Paperclip. Okay, so in the first part, Robert Jackson is discussing the, the, the touchy issue of how do you try the Nazis? You're a foreign army taken defeated a country, and you have to put the bad guys on trial, who are the Nazis. And he goes and explains how that worked. That it wasn't the government of Germany. It was this, and it wasn't the Nazi Party. It was this little secret cabals within Germany that were controlling it, kind of like what's happening today in the United States. And what you can take away from these two speeches here, and you have to dig around on the channel. The Ezra Cohen and DOJ press releases don't go directly to these videos. You have to actually look at the channel and see what else is on there to find this stuff, which is once again right on par with the Q community to look at things from every little angle and look on the rocks and turn things upside down and inside out until you find what the secret message is. Uh, so he goes on to describe over the next 8 minutes this underground conspiracy within Germany, that we're not putting the people of Germany on trial, we're not putting the government as a whole on trial, or even the whole Nazi Party on trial. We're trying to just get at the root of the conspiracy that caused this Holocaust to happen. Although Jackson does add that if we wanted to, we could put everyone on trial because they are all culpable. Today, you could extrapolate the same rationale that, you know, the entire Democratic Party, if they cheated the 2020 election, you technically could go after every Democrat, but it's not practical. Millions of people. So you have to have some kind of balance.
The responsibility implicit in demanding and accepting capitulation of a whole people certainly must include a duty to discriminate justly and intelligently between the opposing elements of that population which bore dissimilar relations to the policies and conduct which led to the catastrophe. This differentiation is the objective of those provisions of the Charter which authorize this tribunal to declare organizations or groups to be criminal.
Now, you'll see there's like every couple of minutes there's a little flip in the video. It must have been very difficult to film this in 1945 or whenever it happened. We've seen pictures of this tribunal before. So they're sitting in a room. The people at the tables behind the speaker are the prosecutors. They don't have a lot of paperwork in front of them, as you could see. And you could tell by their body language that they're kind of bored. This was going on for months. So by the time this speech came up, people were bored, senseless, and you know, they probably had to change film reels every couple of minutes. And the recording, technologically, this was probably a big deal. And historically, I don't think anyone's ever watched the whole thing. I've only seen tiny little clips of this. But off to your right, sometimes later on, they'll pan over to the right. You'll see a bunch of rows perpendicular to this scene we're seeing here, and that's where all the Nazis were sitting who were on trial. So it's basically a small room where they took the Third Reich and found them guilty in the end, which was a foregone conclusion. I mean, history is written by the victors, and then they hung a few of them, but they let a lot of them go, and they brought many of these Nazis into the United States through Operation Paperclip to work in our spy programs, our rocket programs, our psych, our psych programs in the universities, and all these horrible experiments. So Robert Jackson must have been aware of all that while he was putting on this show, and I guess if same thing's going to happen again on a larger scale with the deep state going on trial, that some of these scoundrels are going to slip through the cracks and still be there. So
Understanding of the problem with which the instrument attempts to deal is essential to its interpretation and application. One of the sinister peculiarities of German society at the time of the surrender was that the state itself played only a subordinate role in the exercise of political power, while the really drastic controls over German society were organized outside of the nominal government. This was accomplished through an elaborate network of closely knit and exclusive organizations of selected volunteers, oath-bound to execute without delay and without question the commands of the Nazi leaders. These organizations penetrated the whole German life. The country was subdivided into little Nazi principalities of about 50 households each, and every such community had its recognized party leaders, party police, and its undercover party spies.
So what he's talking about here, in Nazi Germany, there was a deep state, as Archbishop Vigano noted in his letter to President Trump, that there's a deep church, as like we have a deep state in the ecclesiastical world. There's a deep church, and there's a battle going on there between good and evil, just like in the U.S. government and every other sphere. So in Nazi Germany, there was a deep state. What we now know as different institutions pulling the strings behind our enemy was Germany, but within Germany, there were good people, but they were helpless to prevent this. Today, clearly one of the institutions manipulating our U.S. government is the Clinton Foundation, or was up until Trump got elected in 2016. Another one of these institutions that are enemies of civilization and enemies of the U.S. Constitution and the United people of the United States and the people of the several states would be the Atlantic Council, right? Who control a lot of the mainstream media through their Atlantic magazine and you know the Central Intelligence Agency is an extra constitutional entity. Uh, the Federal Bureau of Investigation is an extra constitutional entity as well. Uh, those two agencies do not exist in the United States Code. They're not. They're just kind of outside of everything. So this is what Robert Jackson is discussing here at the Nuremberg trial. So it's very interesting. I would encourage you to go and I'm not going to play the whole thing, but that's the gist of what he goes on and he gives a pretty good presentation. And apparently, from the title here, there's 70 days of this stuff, so they have a lot of film. And the Robert H. Jackson Center, which I never heard of, it's been around for I think about 15 years now, is kind of like a presidential library for this uh, historical figure that I never heard of since before last night. Before our time, right? Probably our parents don't even remember him too well. But thanks to Ezra Cohn, if you look deep enough, you'll find this. I'm going to pretty much stop the screen share now and end the video. You keep digging all night, but there's only so much uh, memory in the computer and attention span. So I'll point you to, you know, the source documents. I'll try to put it in the description below. So thanks for watching and, you know, MAGA.